It might be a while until we get another God of War project other than the Trilogy Remake, so hopefully this will be enough to suffice until then. Also, without sounding too much like David Jaffe, I have not finished the game before writing this, but I did get 7 hours into it. Sons of Sparta, being a Metroidvania, has its story really spread out, so after the first hour, you're not really experiencing the story as often as you do in any other God of War game. Most of your time in the game is spent exploring, so there's not much I can comment on in terms of the story it's trying to tell. It also is a really simple overarching story. The main plot revolves around one of the Spartans, Vasilis, being missing, and Deimos wants him and Kratos to search for him. This isn't me docking points off the game. I get why it would be a really simple premise, as the exploration is the main appeal of Metroidvanias. But I am worried that this will ultimately suffer from the same problem as Chains of Olympus and Ascension, that being that, for the most part, the stories don't matter to the overarching plot of the series. But I'm going to say something that goes against what the general consensus is. I actually really like the timeline of this game's story, that being a time focused on Kratos' youth, and especially Kratos when Calliope and Lysandra were still alive. I think it's really cool to see a human side of Kratos, especially with the Trilogy Remake coming up. Being able to compare Kratos in this game to the monster he is in those 3 games is going to be great. I also think it's cool that we get to see what kind of kid Deimos was. He really wants to help as many people as possible, and it especially hurts knowing that probably right after this game he gets kidnapped by Ares and Athena and is tortured in Death's Domain for the rest of his life because he was mistaken as the Marked Warrior. It really makes me hate the gods even more knowing Kratos probably needed someone like Deimos in his life. I always love it when the Greek games show a more human side of Kratos to conflict with the atrocities he commits throughout the Greek era, and especially to conflict with how he acts in God of War 3. It really helps sell how evil the Greek gods are, that they can turn someone like this into someone like this. For all that game's faults, that is something that I love Ascension for, and how he's still somewhat honor-bound when he was hesitant to kill Orcos. God, I love going off topic and talking about God of War. Ascension is not the point of this video. This is gonna sound pretty weird to start, but you really have to like either Metroidvanias or God of War to get a kick out of this game. I personally don't like Metroidvanias, with some exceptions. I really don't like the amount of backtracking that comes with the genre, and this game is no exception. I don't mind punishing games like Souls-likes, but I don't want to repeat a bunch of content that I already did, whether it's because I died or because the story's progression requires me to backtrack. This does not mean the game is bad. This is a good Metroidvania, and if you personally like Metroidvanias, I'd still recommend it based on that alone. And I do intend on finishing it and even 100%ing it because I love God of War. I just don't particularly like the genre. What I will say as a positive though is there's a lot of content. Considering this is a smaller scale game, I went in expecting to not get $40 worth of content. But I'm 7 hours in and probably only have around 10% completion. A lot of the paths you find early on are locked until you get upgrades and items later on that can unlock those paths, so I felt very constrained early on. But as I started to get Nike's sandals and Hestia's flame, more of those paths started opening up, so I got to return to those areas and get those goodies. But I personally wish you could fast travel between the campfires as well as the sanctuaries. I don't like how I fast travel to a sanctuary, then have to spend 10 minutes walking over to an olive tree, clearing the olive tree, then spending another 10 minutes walking back to the sanctuary. But that is probably because I don't play many Metroidvanias, and that might just be a staple gimmick I'm not aware of. Hey guys, so right after I wrote this, I learned there is an item you can unlock that will open up fast travel between campsites, which is great, but it's gonna be a while until I get it. Another thing I both like and dislike is how many elements from both the Greek and Norse games are present here. The menus and quest navigation are nearly identical to Ragnarok's, and it borrows the same element and stun system as that game. However, it also has a Greek magic system and relics tied to said magic system. It's not on a cooldown either, you have to collect blue orbs to keep using them. Similarly, it has a system where you can prime your attacks, and it almost functions similarly to the Greek game's item systems, kind of like 3 with the head of Helios and bow of Apollo. Lastly, it also has Ragnarok skill, armor, and crafting systems, but the XP is retextured as red orbs. I really like the concept of blending the best game mechanics from both eras into one system and making it all work. The problem is, why was this not used in Valhalla? That's what the point of Valhalla was, combining the Greek and Norse eras into one. Why is there so much Norse influence in a Greek-inspired game? You don't even have to copy the Greek weapon menus one-to-one, they could have made an entirely unique menu and map system. Why is it a carbon copy of Ragnarok's menus? I personally think that's really off-putting, especially since from what I can tell, Megacat were the main developers of this game instead of Santa Monica, the same way Platinum were the lead developers of Ninja Gaiden 4 instead of Team Ninja. There really isn't going to be much for me to talk about here because the performance is nothing to write home about. It's exclusively made for the PS5 and it's not as technically impressive as their other games, so I can't say the performance is good or bad, it's what it's supposed to be. However, I did hear from Captain Koopa that there is a game-breaking bug that has the capability of deleting all of your save progress. He made a video bringing awareness to it, but people have replied to the video saying it's not that common of an issue. I personally haven't seen it yet, but I also haven't seen Megacat address this, so if you're really concerned, I'd say wait until they officially address it. Now, I really like pixelated games. Examples: Katana Zero, Shredder's Revenge, Marvel Cosmic Invasion. These are all primarily pixelated, but they have their own distinct art style, whether it be in the colors or the character and the world design. This game is not that. The colors are mostly muted, the sets don't look very interesting, and until the game zooms in during cutscenes, it's hard to tell it's even pixelated. I really think this game would have been better presented as a hand-drawn 2D game, something similar to Streets of Rage 4 or Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I also think the fact that the pixelation is inconsistent is jarring. The menus should have been pixelated as well, you can't give up halfway through. The last thing I want to say is this, and it has less to do with the game itself. Despite my criticisms of the game, we need more games like this. Sony has a reputation now, for better or for worse, of making exclusively movie-type games with $500 million budgets that take 6 years to make, that place too much of a focus on graphical fidelity. This is not healthy long-term. There needs to be smaller games in between these big releases that don't cost too much to make. Then the expectations are lower, it's easier to make back their budgets, and they aren't constantly teetering at the bottom line. For all the stupid shit Nintendo does, that's one thing they do right. Their big AAA games aren't too expensive to make, and they release plenty of smaller scale games as well. Sony needs that same reputation. They can't keep relying on ultra-realistic copies of The Last of Us Part 2, especially since we've reached the peak of photorealism. There's nowhere we can go past where we are now. Sony needs to be encouraged to do more experimental, low-cost projects like this. They were already on the right track with Astro Bot. We need more of this and that. Even if Sons of Sparta might not be my own cup of tea personally, I can respect the ambition behind the project, and I still intend on fully completing it like the rest of the God of War games. This game needs all the support it can get because its success sends the right message to Sony. That being, they need to make smaller scale games like this. If you love either Metroidvanias or God of War, this is a must play. God of War Sons of Sparta is exclusively available on the PlayStation 5. There are two different versions of the game available, Standard and Digital Deluxe. The Standard Edition costs $30 and just comes with the base game. The Digital Deluxe Edition costs $40 and comes with some in-game goodies. These include the digital artbook and soundtrack, Arrow of Virtue and Unstable Gemstone attachments, some blood orbs and rusty scraps, and a collection of avatars for your PlayStation profile. In case you haven't seen it, I uploaded a channel update video last week that explains the droughts in content between my second Warhammer Space Marines video and this video. I also said after the state of play that I was working on this video, as well as a video that goes over my hopes and concerns for the Trilogy Remake. Originally meant to be a smaller scale video, it's now entering video essay territory. The script is currently 13 pages long and I'm not done with it yet, so it'll be a while until that video comes out. For reference, the script for part 2 of my Ragnarok retrospective series was 15 pages long, and that video ended up being 50 minutes long. That's all I want to say for now. See you guys whenever.